in a town that always looked the same no matter how many years passed. But the moment he stepped out of his car and breathed the cold Vermont air, he sensed something different. The snow-covered streets felt too quiet, like they were waiting for something to happen. The houses were decorated for Christmas, warm lights glowing behind frosted windows. But Ethan felt none of that warmth inside him. He hadn't been home in more than 3 years. Not because he didn't care, but because life had pushed him so far and so fast that coming home felt like touching a memory he no longer belonged to. He walked up the old wooden steps of his parents' porch, brushing off the snow on the railing. His breath hung in the air and the cold stung his cheeks. He had planned to enter the house, greet his mom, drop his bags, and pretend like everything was fine. But before he could even reach the door, something made him stop. A soft crunch of snow behind him. A shift in the air. A presence. He turned slowly, not expecting anything except maybe a neighbor or a delivery truck passing by instead. He saw her, Emma Hayes. He froze as if the cold had suddenly wrapped chains around him. His heartbeat kicked hard, and for a second, he wondered if he was imagining her like some old memory taking shape in the night. But no, she was there, standing at the edge of the porch, snow settling gently on her hair, her cheeks pink from the cold. She wore a long dark coat, and her hands were pushed deep into her pockets like she was trying to hide the fact that she was shaking a little. Maybe from the cold. Maybe from something else. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice just loud enough to reach him. "Hey!" He hadn't heard her voice in years, yet it felt familiar in a way that made the past rush back too quickly. He swallowed hard. "Emma? What? What are you doing here?" She gave a small, uncertain smile, the kind that didn't fully reach her eyes. "Your mom mentioned you were coming home. I was nearby and I thought, maybe I should stop by." He didn't know what to say to that. They hadn't spoken since she left for Boston. Chasing a future, she thought she deserved a future far away from this quiet town, far away from him. He had always admired her courage, but he had never told her how much it hurt when she left. And now, after all this time, she was standing in front of him like the past had waited patiently for both of them to come back. He forced a small smile. "Didn't think I'd see anyone out this late?" She stepped closer, the snow crunching under her boots. "I wasn't planning to stay long. But I guess this was important." He leaned against the porch railing, trying to act calm while his heart kept speeding up for reasons he didn't understand yet. Important how? Her eyes drifted toward the open street where the snow kept falling in steady, soft flakes. "I don't know. Maybe because everything feels strange lately. Maybe because coming back here reminds me of things I didn't want to forget." He studied her for a moment. She looked different older, yes, but softer too. There was something in her expression, something tired and sad. Like life had not been as kind as she had imagined when she left. He wanted to ask her what happened, why she looked like she had been carrying something heavy for too long. But he didn't want to push. She broke the silence first. "Boston isn't what I thought it would be." He blinked. "Really?" She nodded. "Some things look perfect until you're inside them. And then you find cracks you didn't expect." He could tell she wasn't just talking about her job or the city. There was something deeper in her voice, something personal. But before he could ask, she looked at him again with a small, fragile smile. "You look different too, Ethan. It's in a good way or a bad way?" He asked with a weak laugh. "In a way that feels distant," she said quietly. "Like you've been living too fast." He didn't argue. She wasn't wrong. His job had taken him from place to place, hotel to hotel, always traveling, always rushing. He had learned to live out of suitcases and carry silence inside him. He didn't know how to say that, so he just shrugged. She stepped up onto the porch, standing beside him. The snowflakes caught on her lashes, and the glow from the porch light made her look like she was standing inside a memory he never wanted to lose. "Why did you really come here tonight?" he asked gently. She hesitated. "Because I needed to see someone who once knew me better than I know myself now." He felt that sentence in his chest. It landed quietly but deeply, touching a part of him he had kept locked away. Their eyes met. And for the first time that night, The silence between them felt alive, full of questions, old secrets, and the kind of warmth he hadn't felt in years. But Emma suddenly stepped back. "I should go," she whispered, almost as if she was afraid of staying too long. "You don't have to," he said before he even realized the words had come out. She shook her head, giving him a bittersweet smile. Some things are easier when they're short. He watched her move toward the steps, each step slow, like she wasn't fully ready to leave. The snow started falling harder now, wrapping the street in white. She reached the bottom of the steps, then turned slightly. "Ethan," she said softly, "for what it's worth, I'm glad you're home." He didn't have an answer. He only knew that he didn't want her to disappear into the night. He wanted her to stay, to talk, to explain why she looked like someone who had been carrying too much alone. But he couldn't find the right words, and by the time he tried to speak, she was already turning away. He watched her walk down the quiet street, her figure slowly fading into the falling snow. He felt a sharp ache in his chest, the kind that felt strangely familiar, like the same feeling he had years ago. When she left town without looking back, he stood there until she disappeared completely inside the house. His mom greeted him warmly, talking about dinner and catching up. But he barely heard her. His mind kept playing the moment over and over, the way Emma looked at him, the tired sadness in her smile, the way she said she needed to see him. He couldn't shake the feeling that something in her life had fallen apart. Something big. Something she didn't know how to talk about yet, and he couldn't shake the feeling that seeing her again wasn't an accident. That night, as he lay in his childhood room staring at the ceiling, he felt the silence press around him. Not the peaceful silence he remembered from childhood, but a heavier one, the kind that comes when life is about to shift. He tried to sleep, but Emma's face kept filling his thoughts, her eyes, her voice, the way she hesitated before leaving. It made his heart twist in a way he didn't expect. And he realized something he hadn't admitted to himself in years. He had never fully gotten over her, and now she was back. Back on his porch. Back in his memories. Back in the part of his heart he thought he had sealed shut. He didn't know what would happen next. But one thing was clear. Something had changed the moment she appeared in the snow. One silent night. And everything inside him had begun to shift. The world he thought he understood was starting to tilt. And Ethan knew deep down that Emma's return was the beginning of something he could no longer ignore. He noticed it. He had slept only a few hours, waking up every time Emma's voice echoed in his mind. He couldn't shake the image of her standing in the snow, looking both familiar and heartbreakingly changed. Something about her eyes kept returning to him. They held a weight that didn't belong to the girl he once knew. By the time he finally got out of bed, he felt restless, like the whole house was too small to hold whatever was stirring inside him. He needed fresh air. He needed somewhere to think. Or maybe, deep down, he already knew exactly where he wanted to go. He grabbed his jacket and stepped outside, letting the cold morning breeze clear his head. The town was quiet, wrapped in a thin layer of snow. He walked without planning, but his steps naturally led him to the small cafe on Main Street. It's the place where he had spent countless afternoons growing up. The place where time always seemed to slow down. When the bell over the door chimed, he expected to see the same barista, the same counter, the same old-fashioned menu board. He didn't expect to see Emma sitting by the window. She looked up immediately, almost like she had been waiting for him. Her hands were wrapped around a steaming mug she hadn't touched. Her eyes softened when they met his. "You came," she said. A quiet relief in her voice. Ethan hesitated only a second before sitting across from her. "Couldn't sleep much." She gave a small smile. "Me neither." There was no awkwardness this time. I live a strange, warm familiarity that felt both comforting and dangerous. He noticed she wasn't wearing any makeup, and her hair was slightly messy, like she had rushed out without thinking too hard about it. She looked real, human, a little fragile. He cleared his throat. "So you're still in town?" "Yeah," she said, looking down at her mug. "I needed a few days to think." "About what?" She took a breath, then looked up again. "About everything." Her voice held something heavy, but he didn't push her. Instead, he asked gently, "How's Boston?" She let out a soft laugh, not a happy one. Busy, loud, too fast. Sometimes I feel like I'm running, but not actually getting anywhere. He nodded. He understood that feeling more than he wanted to admit. She continued, her tone quieter. I liked the idea of the city, the opportunities, the excitement. But somewhere along the way, I stopped recognizing myself. Her fingers tightened around the mug. I didn't expect that. He watched her carefully, noticing the way her shoulders slumped when she talked about her life. She had always been determined, confident, sure of where she was going. Seeing her like this made something twist inside him. He leaned forward slightly. "You don't sound happy there?" she exhaled. "I'm not sure I even know what happy looks like anymore." The words hung between them, and for a moment, the cafe felt too quiet to distract her. He asked, "Do you remember when this place used to sell those huge cinnamon rolls?" Her face brightened just a little. "I thought about those on the drive here." He smiled and she relaxed. They fell into talking softly at first, then more openly. The conversation moved quickly, touching memories they both remembered clearly. The school play where Ethan forgot his lines and Emma whispered them to him from backstage. The time they tried to sled down Miller Hill and crashed into Mrs. Parker's mailbox. The afternoons at the lake when life felt simple and their futures felt full of possibilities they didn't understand yet. With every memory, something melted, some invisible layer between them at one point. Emma brushed her hair behind her ear, the same old habit she had when she was nervous. Ethan's chest tightened without warning. He hadn't expected that one small gesture to pull him right back into the feelings he thought he had buried years ago. Then her expression changed, turning more serious. "Ethan," she said softly, "can I tell you something?" "Yeah," he said, leaning in. She hesitated. "Leaving this town. I thought it was the right choice. And maybe it was. But leaving you?" She stopped, her breath catching. "I don't think I ever understood what that decision really meant. Not until recently." He froze, unsure if he heard her right. His heartbeat stumbled and the cafe suddenly felt warmer, smaller. "Emma," he began, but she continued, her voice trembling slightly. "I thought I needed a bigger life, a bigger world. But maybe I was running from something I didn't know how to face," she whispered. "And maybe that something was you." Ethan felt the world tilt for a moment. Her words hit him deeper than he was prepared for. He wanted to ask what she meant, why she was saying this now, but before he could speak, the bell above the cafe door rang again. A man walked in mid-30s, tall, dressed in a clean winter coat, carrying himself with a confidence that suggested he belonged somewhere important. He looked around the cafe until his eyes landed on Emma. "There you are," the man said, approaching their table. His voice was calm but firm. "We need to talk." The atmosphere shifted instantly. Emma straightened, her expression tightening. She looked uncomfortable, almost caught. Ethan sat back, confused. He didn't know who the man was. But he didn't like the way Emma's shoulders suddenly tensed. The man looked at Ethan, giving him a polite nod that didn't feel polite at all. "I'm Daniel." Ethan nodded back. "Ethan." Daniel returned his attention to Emma. "We talked about this. You can't just disappear." Kama swallowed hard. "Daniel, please, this isn't a good time." He ignored her discomfort. "You didn't answer my calls. Or my texts." Emma looked down, her fingers tightening again around her mug. "I needed space." Daniel frowned. "Space from what?" Emma didn't answer. Ethan felt a strange heat rising in his chest. He didn't know who Daniel was to her, but he didn't like the way he spoke to her, like she owed him an explanation for every breath she took. Daniel finally looked at Ethan again. "Are you two catching up?" Emma spoke quickly. "Yes, that's all." But Ethan saw the flicker of something in her eyes, something uncertain, something scared, something that felt like she was trapped between two versions of her life. Daniel exhaled sharply. "Emma, can we please talk?" Outside, she didn't move. She looked at Ethan instead, and that was the moment Ethan realized something. Whatever was happening in her life, she didn't want to face it alone when she finally stood. She placed her hand briefly on the table near Ethan, as if anchoring herself before stepping away. "I'll be right back," she whispered to him, her voice barely steady. Ethan nodded, though his heart hammered like he was standing on the edge of something he wasn't prepared to face. He watched as she followed. Daniel outside. Through the window, he saw them talking, Daniel gesturing sharply, Emma shaking her head, her breath turning to white fog in the cold air. She looked overwhelmed, tense, hurt. Ethan's fingers curled around his coffee cup, but he stayed where he was. This wasn't his business, not yet. But that didn't stop the worry growing inside him. Minutes passed. Too many minutes. Finally, Emma returned inside alone. Her cheeks were red, not from the cold but from emotion she was trying hard to hide. She sat down slowly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want that to happen here. Who is he?" Ethan asked gently. She stared at her hands. "He's someone I was seeing, but it's complicated." Ethan didn't push. He simply waited. Emma finally looked up, her voice trembling. "Ethan, I didn't come here to fix things with him. I came here because I needed to remember who I really am. And you. You're a part of that." His heart thudded painfully in his chest. The cafe suddenly felt quiet again, heavy, full of unspoken truths. And Ethan understood something he wasn't ready to face. He wasn't just reconnecting with someone from his past. He was being pulled into the middle of a story that wasn't finished, a story that might break him apart, or change everything. Stepped out of a storm. Her eyes were red, but not from crying, more like she had been holding back everything she wanted to say. Her hands trembled slightly as she wrapped them around her mug, though the coffee had already gone cold. She stared into it as if searching for words at the bottom. Ethan leaned forward. "Emma," he said softly, "you don't have to explain anything. You're not ready to." She shook her head slowly. "No, I think I do." Her voice was quiet but determined. The voice of someone who had finally reached the point where staying silent hurt more than speaking. Outside, snow continued falling gently against the windows. The street lights glowed through the misty glass, and for a moment felt like they were the only two people in the entire world. Emma took a slow breath. "Daniel and we've been together for almost a year." Ethan nodded, trying to keep his expression steady. "Okay, but things haven't been right for a long time," she continued. "We kept trying to make it work, pretending everything was fine. But it wasn't. And the more I tried to fix it, the more I felt like I was losing myself." Her voice cracked slightly, and Ethan felt something painful twist inside his chest. She looked up at him, her eyes shining with guilt and confusion. Coming here wasn't supposed to be about him, or about us. I just needed space. I needed somewhere that felt safe. Swallowed hard, his voice gentle. "And you came here?" "Yes," she whispered, "because when everything around me feels wrong, this is the one place that still feels real. And you." Her voice drifted off before she finished the sentence. But Ethan understood what she meant. He felt it too, that strange warmth. That familiarity that didn't belong to the past or the present, but something in between. He leaned back, trying to breathe steadily. "You don't have to make any decisions right now." Emma's eyes softened. "That's the thing, Ethan. I think I already did." Before he could respond, the cafe door opened again, and for a moment Ethan thought Daniel had returned. But it was just an older couple shaking snow from their coats. Still, the brief moment of tension reminded Ethan how delicate the situation was. Emma watched the door close, then looked back at Ethan. "I told him it's over." Ethan blinked, surprised. "Just now?" She nodded. "I've been trying to pretend for months. Trying to convince myself it wasn't the wrong relationship, just the wrong timing. But last night, when I saw you on that porch, something inside me shifted. I remembered who I used to be. And I remembered the version of myself I actually liked." Ethan didn't know how to respond. He wasn't used to hearing her speak this honestly. It felt like they had traveled years in a single night. Emma looked down at her hands again. her fingers brushing the rim of her cup. Daniel isn't a bad person. He just isn't. My person. Ethan felt a tightness in his chest at those words. He wanted to reach across the table, hold her hand, tell her she wasn't alone. But he didn't want to rush anything. She was vulnerable, standing at the end of one chapter and at the beginning of another. Instead, he asked carefully, "What are you going to do now?" She gave a small, uncertain laugh. "I don't know. I guess that's the part that scares me." They sat in silence for a moment, letting the weight of her words settle. Then Emma looked up again. "Last night, when I saw you, it wasn't just memories that came back. It was everything I used to feel. Everything I never said. And everything I was too afraid to admit." Ethan felt his heartbeat rise. "Emma, I know," she said quickly, her voice trembling. "I know it's sudden. And I know I'm not asking you for anything. I need you to understand that coming back here wasn't an accident. Seeing you wasn't an accident. And feeling this way," she placed her hand on her chest, "is not something I can ignore anymore." Her honesty hit him so hard he almost forgot how to breathe. He leaned closer, his voice low. "Emma, I never stopped caring about you. Not really. Even when you left, even when you moved on. There was always a part of me that wondered what might have happened if you stayed." Her eyes softened. "I wondered that too." The cafe grew quieter as the lunch crowd faded. Outside, the snowfall slowed and the sky turned a softer gray, like even the weather was calming around them. Emma exhaled. "Ethan, do you think we missed our chance?" He shook his head. "No, I think we just paused it." A faint smile touched her lips, but it didn't erase the uncertainty in her expression. "And now?" "Now," he said gently, "we figure things out slowly. Not because we're rushing into something, but because something is already here." She looked down, and when she lifted her eyes again, they were filled with something warm hope mixed with fear. Mixed with longing. "Ethan," she whispered, "I don't want to go back to Boston alone. I don't want to pretend my life there is enough. And I don't want to keep choosing things that don't feel like home." "You don't have to," he said. Her voice shook. "Then what do I do?" He moved his hand slightly toward hers, not touching yet. Just close enough that she could feel the promise behind the gesture. "You don't make any decisions today," said softly. "You stay here. You breathe. You take time to heal from everything that hurt you. And when you're ready, we'll talk about what comes next." Emma stared at his hand, then slowly, very slowly placed her fingers on top of his dot. The touch was gentle, barely there, but it carried years of emotions neither of them had spoken aloud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was quiet, steady, full of meaning. "Ethan," she whispered, "you always know how to make things feel less heavy." He smiled. "You always make things feel like they matter." She laughed softly, the kind of laugh that had warmth hidden inside it. For the first time in years, Ethan felt the weight on his chest ease. Maybe this was the beginning of something new, not the kind that came in fireworks, but the kind that grew slowly, carefully, rooted in real emotion. Eventually, they left the cafe together, stepping into the cold evening air. Snow crunched under their feet, and the town looked peaceful under the streetlights. Emma wrapped her scarf tighter around her neck, and Ethan walked beside her without brushing too close, giving her space while silently promising he wasn't going anywhere. As they walked down the quiet street, Emma whispered, "Do you think everything really can change in one night?" Ethan looked at her, at the way the snow caught in her hair, at the way she looked both scared and brave at the same time. "Yeah," he said softly. "I think sometimes that's exactly how change begins." She smiled, the kind of smile that felt like a new page turning. And as they continued walking side by side, Ethan realized something. One silent night hadn't just flipped his world upside down. It had given him a chance he thought he would never get again. A chance at something real, something vulnerable, something that might actually last.